The South African National Defence Force has confirmed that 13 South African soldiers have died in the eastern DRC. The situation remains volatile and unpredictable, with the SANDF saying it remains committed to its peacekeeping responsibilities. Meanwhile, President Cyril Ramaphosa held a telephonic call with President Paul Kagame of Rwanda to discuss the recent developments and the escalation in the fighting that's underway. The two heads of state have agreed on the urgent need for a ceasefire and the resumption of peace talks by all parties to the conflict. Now, to discuss this even further, we're joined by the Institute for Security Studies consultant, Peter Fabricius. A very good evening to you. Thank you so much for your time. I mean, we're learning with the 4 more members of the SANDF being killed. As we try and make sense of the situation on the ground, what does it tell us about the tensions on the ground as the M23 overruns Goma?
Yeah, well, I mean, the M23, as we know, is thoroughly backed militarily and otherwise by Rwanda. It's a very powerful force as a result, with some very sophisticated weaponry, such as surface-to-air missiles and so on. And it's, I mean, Paul Kagame, the president of Rwanda, has various strategic objectives, I believe, in ensuring that the M23 makes its presence felt in the DRC. You know, captured Goma, which is a very powerful statement. It becomes a kind of bargaining chip in negotiations. And makes it very difficult to dislodge Rwanda from the eastern DRC.
As you say that, I mean, we know that a very disturbing video was circulating on social media showing an SANDF soldier raising a white flag at the base. And the SANDF has since reacted, saying that the video is showing its troops raising that flag was them seeking a truce and not a surrender. What's your take on that reaction?
Yeah, I'm inclined to believe that it's you know, one doesn't know. We're a long way from the battlefield, and the fog of war is very thick and dense. But yeah, the fact that they don't seem to have surrendered, they do still seem to be in the base, as far as we know. And also, this is not only from the SANDF, but from other, you know, like members of officials of the National Defence Union. That would tend to corroborate the view that it wasn't a surrender. It was a temporary truce negotiation, which didn't succeed.
Yeah. It hasn't succeeded, and you know, as you and I speak, some families are perhaps looking to hear more information about their loved ones who are involved in that you know, battle, that intense fighting. As you assess what's happening there on the ground, I mean, from a security point of view, what are your findings?
Well, I mean, it's the whole region of the eastern DRC has been terribly unstable for decades, really, one would have to say. And this is just intensifying that. You know, I mean, it's a sort of battleground for countless numbers of armed rebel groups. No, literally, people don't know how many. But none is quite as ruthless and efficient as the M23. I think largely because it is supported by Rwanda. You know, with weaponry, with training, with actual reinforcement with Rwandan soldiers who are physically present in the eastern DRC, and now they're running rampant. They've taken over several towns and now the city of Goma. So it's a highly unstable situation.
Yeah. Yeah. And as the reports continue to emerge of that intense fighting with South African soldiers in Goma, calls are being made for Defence Minister Angie Motshekga to do something, urgently address the situation. How should this matter be handled? Or you know, as you look and assess surely one would have thought that reinforcements would be sent. What are the plans that could be put in place to try and avert further loss of life?
Yeah. Well, as far as I was told by authoritative, sources, on Sunday night, the South African National Defence Force was contemplating sending in reinforcements. But what then happened was that the M23 overtook Goma more rapidly than the SANDF had anticipated, and that cut off the possibility of air supply, either reinforcements or of equipment. And so they abandoned the notion of reinforcements. The option now is basically a ceasefire. That, as your introduction mentioned, Presidents Kagame and Ramaphosa discussed that as the best option, and there are several diplomatic initiatives underway. One right now, actually, there's a meeting of the SADC security organ Troika, meeting virtually, to discuss this. Tomorrow there's going to be a meeting of the East African Community, a summit, in which hopefully both Kagame and the DRC President Tshisekedi will be participating, because they're both members of the East African Community. It's a meeting called by Kenyan President William Ruto, and hopefully, they will agree on a ceasefire, which will mean, amongst other things, apart from addressing the larger question, it will give an opportunity for our troops to be relieved, where they are now apparently trapped in their bases in Goma and Sake.
Just, you speak about troops being relieved. Relieved as in pack their bags and head back home? What sort of relief?
Yeah, well, that's the question. I mean, to be released, I guess, from their entrapment, if you want to put it like that.
Yeah.
But what that will mean in terms of their longer term presence, I think is a rather open question. Because that may become a contentious issue in negotiations. It is possible that a ceasefire would enable those troops. I mean, for one thing, they need to send some of their wounded comrades out to be treated, apparently, because that was one of the terms that was being discussed in that truce negotiation, at the time the white flag was raised. So there are various possibilities. A ceasefire might simply be a kind of humanitarian gesture pending further negotiations about the substance. It's hard to say at this stage.
Should talks be unsuccessful, what would that mean for troops on the ground? Yeah,
look, as I said, if the idea is, as I gather, it is to have a ceasefire, and then to have more substantive talks, then maybe they will be relieved. They'll be able to treat their wounded. They'll be able to get supplies and food and drink and whatever, maybe ammunition. I don't know, and then. Then the substantive negotiations would start, and depending on those, their future situation would be determined. But it's my concern here is that it's possible that Kagame might say, I'm prepared to let them all go, but only on condition that they leave the country, that they get out of it, because he's taken the view all along that the M23 is a Congolese problem, not a Rwandese problem, but they are Congolese citizens who are being persecuted because they're ethnic Tutsi. And so the Congo should sort that out. Congolese should sort it out amongst themselves and not involve outsiders. And that the SADC force, including the South Africans, is basically a kind of foreign invasion force. It's not, it's not necessarily a view that I share, but it could be what shapes his take on the negotiations for a ceasefire.
Very well. Thank you so much. Thanks for weighing in on this developing story. Speaking there to the Institute for Security Studies consultant, Peter Fabricius, joining us there, expanding as we continue to watch the developments in the DRC, Eastern DRC.